So after a relatively crazy morning around MLS where I had to make a couple of videos talk about breaking news around MLS, it's time for me to finally do the review of part 2 of the midweek action, as I'm going to look at the last 7 games. And today I'm also probably going to make a record 4 video in a single day on my YouTube channel, because after that I still have to do my news of the week video and I have to kind of review what happened actually in the secondary transfer window, which there isn't really anything that is happening in the deadline of the secondary transfer window, which is actually today. But first of all, let us begin with the first game, which is the Union versus the Chicago Fire, as the Union, they avoid the dreaded trap by winning 2-1 against the Chicago Fire. Although if you're a Fire fan, I do feel that they have a right to be angry about this game, because there was definitely referee decision that went against them, and there was a red card in this game that probably should have not been a red card, and that it probably kind of changed the compression of this game. Now, in the first half, I thought Chicago started well, and they had a couple of half chances to get the opening goal, but instead, it's the Union that gets the opening goal, and it was actually a penalty that they were awarded after Calvo basically handballed it in the box. I know there was a lot of Fire fans that was also angry about this controversial call, but I thought this was a penalty, knowing the fact that it definitely looked like, from the camera angle, Calvo kind of reached his arm out to touch the ball, and when you have an outstretched arm like that, that obviously is going to be a penalty, which Shabilko was able to put away to give the Union a 1-0 lead. Then they almost made it 2-0 when Shuttleworth was able to rob Jack Elliott, who had a free header. And anytime when you allow Jack Elliott to have a free header, you 9 out of 10 times you're going to probably concede. And the Fire are very lucky that Shuttleworth was able to make an incredible save to deny Jack Elliott a chance to get on the score sheet. Then we get to the red card and the controversial moment of this game. And again, I don't think this is a red card. And if anything, I think at best this is a yellow card, because, well, yes, Calvo did step on Bedoya's feet, but I feel like it was kind of accidental, and there was just no intention whatsoever of him trying to step on his opponent's feet. And I've seen before where sometimes players step on opponent's feet. It's not even going to give it a yellow card, because it's not egregious whatsoever. So I thought that was a very harsh red card for Calvo, and that I know that Chicago fans are very angry about that call, and they have rights to be angry with that call, because that was definitely not a red card in my book. But thankfully, the Chicago Fire was able to get the equalizer despite the fact that they were down to 10 men. And it was actually Robert Beric that was able to score from Mihajlovic to tie the game up at 1 apiece as we head to halftime. But in the second half, the Union would get the lead back, and it would be Corey Burke, who just came on as a substitute, able to score from Mbizo and Aronson. What a moment that is for Corey Burke, with him being with the Union for the 3rd time, and also scoring a goal that what turns out to be the winning goal. Although later, as we get later into the game, it looked like the Fire was pretty much putting all the attack on the Union, and the Union was just kind of hanging on for dear life. Although before that, there was definitely a huge concern, if you're a Union fan, that Andre Blake actually was subbed off for Joe Bendik after it looked like he suffered a hand injury. And when you're a goalkeeper and you suffer a hand injury, that is a very bad injury to suffer. So obviously Union fans are really hoping it's not very serious, because losing Blake is a huge blow in terms of their chances if they want to make a deep run into the playoffs. Now, in the stoppage time, as I said, the Fire was really causing chaos in front of the Union backline, and somehow, in some way, they didn't equalize in the first minutes of stoppage time, as Wooten somehow, with an acrobatic clearance off the line after it was a looping header that I'm not quite sure, was it actually off of a Fire player, or was it actually off of a Union player, and it would have been an own goal. But either way, it was a looping header that looked in the world it was going to go into the back of the net, but somehow, in some way, Wooten was there to just clear that one and kind of do an overhead kick to clear that one off the line. And in the end, the Union was able to survive after a late push from the Chicago Fire. And the shots in this game, 14 shots compared to 12 that the Fire has, 7 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Fire has, 3 shots off target compared to 4 that the Fire has, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that the Fire has, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that the Chicago Fire had in this game. And that, again, the Union, they survive in terms of what this looked like it was a trap game for them. And they also are a big winner in terms of them having a chance to win the Supporters Shield, because with TFC losing this week and them getting win, they grab a huge 3 points and get a 3-point lead in terms of the Supporters Shield race. But moving on in terms of the next match, and actually one more thing before I talk about the next match. For the Fire, obviously it's the disappointing loss, but at the same time, I think they're the first team in MLS history that, despite the fact that they lose this game, they somehow still move up above the red line, because, as I mentioned earlier, of how MLS is now going with a points per game system, Chicago have moved up above the red line because they technically have a better points per game ratio, and that they technically are still in the driving seat in terms of making the playoffs, because the team that is below them and around them, unfortunately, did not get a resort this week to take advantage of them dropping all 3 points in this one. But moving on in terms of the next match is DC versus Columbus, and I think DC is probably the biggest winner in terms of teams that is chasing for the playoff spot, because while all the other team around them lost their game this week, DC was one of the only one that was able to get the result, as they were able to get a 1-0 win against a Columbus team that, I guess this was kind of a throwaway game for Caleb Porter, because when I look at the starting 11, it definitely looked like it was a relatively weak starting 11, and I don't know why does he think this is a throwaway game, consider there is still no guarantee the fact that his team is potentially going to finish that third spot, and that there are a couple of teams below them that has started to catch up to him. But for DC, this is a huge win for them, and that they actually started off well early in this game and almost scored 8 minutes in, as Rivas and Pines was going with the same header, but unfortunately it went wide, and because of the fact that they were going through the same header, I think both of them kind of got into each other's way and stared that header that was just wide off the post. Before Mensah, on the other hand, had a header that was clear off the line by Moreno, but eventually DC would get the opener and what turns out to be the winning goal in this game, as Julian Gresso would score from Yamil Assad. This actually took a wicked deflection off of Keita that was redirected toward goal, but obviously DC won't care. They got the crucial 1-0 lead in this game and heading into halftime. Although in the second half, Columbus were looking to try to get the equalizer. Diaz almost had the equalizer in the 52nd minute when he puts an 18-yard shot that just fizzed wide, before Namath had a header that just went wide off the post, and it looked like DC was trying to sit back and looked like they were holding on to the 1-0 lead. But that being said, just 4 minutes before we head to stoppage time, Sorgar almost put the game away with a 16-yard shot, but unfortunately he puts that one wide. But it didn't matter in the end, because DC was able to hang on to win 1-0 against Columbus. And the shots in this game, there wasn't really a lot of chances for both teams, as there was only 9 shots compared to 7 that Columbus had. Both teams only combined with 2 shots on goal, 6 shots off target compared to 3 that Columbus had, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that the Columbus Crew has, and possession-wise, 48% possession compared to 52% possession. And with this win, DC have now won 3 in a row. And like I said before, remember how this team was dead and buried a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, this was really just them firing Ben Olsen is kind of just them kind of signaled the end of the era, and that they're going to go through a transition. Yeah, well, that seemed like it's not going to happen, at least until the off season, because they are definitely making a late playoff push, and that teams around them that is fighting for playoff position, yeah, this is kind of a result that they do not want to see. And that if you are those teams that is just above the red line, looking at you, Chicago and Montreal, or even Miami, who just below the red line right now, you should really be concerned with DC United, because this team is actually tied with Chicago in terms of the playoff position. And again, even though Chicago is still in the driving seat because they have a game in hand, which they will be playing that game in hand, I think, next week against Minnesota on the road. DC, if they can able to continue to get victories, they can really find themselves going above the red line and making the playoffs, where 3 weeks ago, if you would have told me that DC would have a chance to make the playoffs or even have a chance to clinch the playoffs after how much of a mess this team was in, yeah, you would call me just completely crazy. But that's the beauty of this year. I mean, crazy thing has happened, and you just cannot count anybody out in this year until the final week of the season, because they would somehow in some way make a crazy late run as what DC is doing right now, and that they are really on verge of potentially making the playoffs after it looked like that hope was dead and buried just 3 weeks ago. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Minnesota versus the Colorado Rapids. So, as I said earlier today, with the fact that MLS is going with a points per game system, this also means that one more team have clinched their spot in terms of making the playoffs, and that team is none other than my team, Minnesota, with this 2-1 win against Colorado. Even though at that time we didn't know the fact that that was the win that got us to the playoffs, today it was pretty much confirmed with the points per game system. Although I will say this was the second game in a row I thought the Loons got really lucky that they got all 3 points in this game, and I thought Colorado played much better in this game against the Loons compared to that 4-0 thrashing that they took in the hands of SKC just 3 days ago. Because early on, just for the first minute of the game, Jonathan Lewis almost gave Colorado a 1-0 lead as he went through on goal, but unfortunately couldn't put it away. And that I thought the Loons defense was very suspect early in this game, and they were giving chances to Colorado to potentially get the opener, but thankfully that did not happen, and that eventually Minnesota did start to kind of get going again, and that the attack, once again, I thought it was really good on the build-up, but once it gets to the final third, that's when things just kind of breaks down, and that they just had no idea what to do with the ball once they get into the final third. And in the 26th minute, more bad news for Minnesota, as Ozzy Alonso was actually subbed off with an injury, and that he was actually in tears when he was subbed off with that injury. And you know, when I see that, not only the fact that I worry the worst, and that this might be the worst case scenario, that maybe Ozzy Alonso is going to have suffer a big injury that might mean he's not going to come back to the Loons this season, but is this the final time we're going to see Ozzy Alonso in a Loon shirt? Because that definitely was not a good injury whatsoever, and I'm just really hoping that it's not really a serious injury, and that's not the last time we are going to not see Ozzy Alonso, because we just got back him, and I just talked about how huge it was to finally got Ozzy back in the midfield, and now he is out with an injury again. Yeah, I mean, that's just sums up this season for the Loons, isn't it? Where they're just absolutely cursed this season in terms of injury, and it's you know, in some way, even though I've been kind of harsh, the fact that for the past couple of days I've been harsh with Minnesota, I do have to give them credit, the fact that somehow in some way, with all the injuries that we had to deal with, and it seemed like we're just being cursed every single week with injury, somehow in some way they still find a way to get themselves into the playoffs. But yeah, that was definitely a really concerning sign, and I'm really hoping that's not the last time we're going to see Ozzy Alonso in a Minnesota United shirt. But the good news for Minnesota is that they did get the opening goal right on the stroke at halftime, as Robin Lod was able to score from Reynoso. What a beautiful ball this was from Reynoso to give it to Lod, who makes absolutely no mistake to give Minnesota a 1-0 lead. And that's got to be a killer for Colorado, because they look like they were going to head to halftime 0-0 and definitely have a chance to do something in the second half and catch Minnesota off guard, but they concede right on the stroke of halftime. Although that didn't really kind of trouble them, at least for the first couple of minutes, because in the second half, once again, 1 minute into the second half, Sinclair had to deny Rosenberry from a long yard range effort before Minnesota started to get some chances, with Yarbrough robbing Schoenfeld in the 52nd minute. And I also thought we really needed this second goal, because as much as we were getting a couple of chances to get this second goal, so was Colorado, getting some chances of equalizing in this game. And just as after I wrote this on the board of how we need the second goal, 2 minutes later, Shinishiki scores from Rubio to tie the game up from the Rapids, and yeah, I feel like I should have never wrote that we needed this second goal, or maybe I should have wrote this even earlier and just kind of put a sign for these Minnesota player to see that, yeah, we need the second goal, because I know we're not going to hold on to this 1-0 lead. And there it is. In the 69th minute, we concede that equalizer. Although, credit to the Loons player, they didn't really gave up, and that they were instantly trying to get that lead back. 71st minute, Molino was unlucky to hit the post, and unlucky to give the Loons the lead back just 2 minutes after Colorado equalized, before he was denied by Yarbrough in the 79th minute, who actually made a very decent save, because Molino was actually through on goal. And that is one that I think Molino would really want to have one back, but at the same time, that was a great job from Yarbrough coming out and making himself as big as possible to deny him. But ultimately, Minnesota did get the late goal for the second time this week. And again, this was also a time where for the second week in a row, I thought it wasn't going to happen. I thought this was going to be one of those games where it's another disappointing draw at home, and another game where we drop points to a team that we should clearly be able to beat in terms of improving our chances of make the playoffs. And then Abubakar happened in the 89th minute, where unfortunately he basically tried to head it away, but he actually misheaded his header and basically ends up into his own net. And just like that, the Loons were able to get the lead back, and they would hold on to this lead as they get a 2-1 win against the Rapids. Shots in this game, 25 shots compared to 12 that the Rapids had. 5 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Rapids had. 10 shots off target compared to 4 that the Rapids had. 10 shots out was blocked compared to 4 that the Rapids had. And possession-wise, 48% possession compared to 52% possession that the Rapids had. And the good news for the Rapids, since now that they heard about this points per game system, they do get themselves now above the red line, because remember, heading into when they returned to play, they actually had a really good points per game ratio, although it's kind of taken a little bit hit in the past couple of games of getting back-to-back losses, but they still are in a good position in terms of making the playoffs. Whereas for Minnesota, they have made it to the playoffs, although, like I said last week, I am not going to sugarcoat the fact that this was an impressive victory for Minnesota, and that I once again are going to say that this is something that Minnesota cannot keep doing. Like, these last couple of weeks, we have been really lucky with some of these resources, and that I am just still very concerned in terms of the fact that this team, the attack is still not going and still kind of sputter. And then in some way, I'm kind of in the same scenario as I was last year, where last year I was happy the fact that the team was near the top part of the table, but then at the same time, I was also getting concerned with the attack, where it was sputtering, and that as we head to playoff time, my worst fear kind of came true with the fact that because of our attack kind of sputter, and at times our attack wasn't able to put away our chances, that's why we lost to the Galaxy in that opening round. And I fear that this could happen again, where once we get to the playoffs, and this time I think we're going to even play against an even better team with the likes of LAFC that we could be facing if the playoffs started today. That is definitely a result that I don't see the Loons is going to win, especially with the way that they've been playing right now. And again, I know they won I know they're unbeaten in 6 games, and they have now won 2 in a row. But you got to also remember, all these teams that we've been facing has been relatively easy team, and I think the next game against Sporting KC, that can really be a game that can really test the Loons, and that I also have a feeling that could also be a game where Adrian Heath's going to see, yeah, that's probably just a throwaway game, and we're not going to really play for a win and just play for a draw. And if that's the case, that's going to frustrate the hell out of me, because, come on, that is a game that is a chance to prove what you can do in the playoffs, and if you cannot be able to step in and play well against a playoff opponent, what's the chances of this team actually going to go in a deep run heading into the playoffs? I mean, I don't know. I might be being a little bit harsh to Minnesota with my assumption the last couple of weeks, but again, I still don't see how this team can make a deep deep run into the playoffs, especially how they have looked in the past couple of games, which has not been very inspiring. But moving on into the next game, and actually the last game on this board before I have to switch boards, is Dallas and Miami. And boy, do FC Dallas need this win. And with this win, they actually are now on the doorstep of potentially become the next Western Conference team to clinch the playoffs, because since their points per game ratio is 1.48, and I believe LAFC got to the playoffs and clinched their spot with a 1.51 points per game ratio. That means that I think it's going to be as soon as the next game that Dallas could potentially clinch their self into the playoffs if they are able to get a win in their next game. But first, they of course got a huge win against a Miami side that was battling for a playoff position. And that early on, I thought Dallas was kind of all over Inter Miami, and they looked like they scored the first goal just 2 minutes into this game after there was a scramble in the box that led to a goal for Dallas. But unfortunately, after all that scramble, there was an offside that was in during that scramble that of course allowed the goal to be disallowed. And again, Dallas, they looked like they were the better side, at least for the first 17 minutes, and had all the possession against Miami. And that they almost got the opening goal in the 17th minute, but McCarthy with an incredible save to rob Holland's head, who had a free header near the back post. And then just 1 minute later, on the other end, Maurer was able to deny Morgan on a free header, and that Miami almost caught FC Dallas and almost scored a goal against the run of play. But Holland's head had another chances in the back post with a free header, but unfortunately he wasn't able to put away this one either in the 32nd minute. And that as we were heading into the end of the first half, Miami was able to get the opening goal, and I actually forgot to put the goal for Inter Miami, so I'm gonna actually go back into my book here. Yep. So they actually scored in the 33rd minute when Pizarro was able to score from Gonzalo Higuain, and what a ball this was from Higuain to kind of just slip past that Dallas backline, and it was a perfectly run for Pizarro to get that ball and pretty much went one-on-one with Maurer and puts that one away. And Inter Miami, just like that, getting a 1-0 lead that, on the balance of play, I think it was kind of a little bit against the run of play because Dallas had a lot of the chances. But when you were able to do such a beautiful combination as what Higuain and Pizarro did in that sequence, I think they definitely deserve to get the opening goal, and that they of course were able to catch Dallas, who all those missed chances that they had kind of came back to haunt them in the first half in terms of them not getting the first goal, but instead finding themselves 1-0 down heading into the second half. Now, in the second half, Dallas was really pushing for the equalizer, and they finally got that equalizer in the 59th minute. And it's all thanks to LGP, who, he unfortunately bring down Reynolds in the box. And I have no idea why LGP is complaining whatsoever, because that is a stone cold penalty with the way that he just clumsily bring down Brian Reynolds into the box. With Franco Jara was able to put away the penalty to tie the game up at 1 apiece for Dallas, and you just kind of fear that this was a goal that will really start to give Dallas going, and that Miami was trying to maybe just hold on for a point in this game. Although that is until you realize that 1 minute later they almost got the lead back when Jimmy Maurer was able to deny Higuain from a tight angle before Matuidi had a free header in the box, but unfortunately he wasn't able to put away in the 63rd minute. But then after Matuidi missed that free header, on the other end, McCarthy was able to rob Barrios, who actually also had himself a free header, and the game kind of started to become a little bit end-to-end with the way that looked like that goal was really up for grabs, and whoever is going to score that second goal is going to potentially have the superiority during this game. And in the end, it was Dallas, the one that was able to get that next goal to have the superiority and a chance to win the game. And after Holland's head missed some very, very, very decent chances in the first half. He made up for it in the second half in the 81st minute as he was able to score a tap in after a beautiful ball that was delivered in the box from Reynolds and Barrios to give Dallas a 2-1 lead. And that would be the final score of this game, as Dallas had 12 shots compared to 10 that Miami has. Both teams had 6 shots on goal, 2 shots off target per the 1 that Miami has, 4 shots out that was blocked per the 3 that Miami has, and possession-wise, 56% possession compared to 44% possession that Inter Miami had in this game. And again, big win for Dallas, who desperately needed this win, knowing the fact that things were kind of become a little bit sour for Luchi Gonzalez's team, and that they were kind of starting to slip down the standings and in a point where they're actually just above the teams that were fighting for playoff position in the Western Conference. But with this huge 3 points, I think they should be able to get themselves at least into the playoffs, and that they should get a chance to potentially clinch their playoff spot as soon as this weekend. But that being said, I am now going to switch the board and look at the last 3 games that happened from this weekend's action. So, you know how earlier I said that we're going to look at the last 3 games in terms of the weekend action? Well, what I meant by that was actually looking at the last 3 games in terms of the midweek action, which the first one we're going to look at is the Portland Timbers against the Galaxy. And not only the fact that Guillermo Barros-Schelotto was announced today that he is going to be fired by the Galaxy and that he's no longer with this team, so is pretty much the playoff chances for the Galaxy, as it's pretty much have gone up in flames after this game against the Portland Timbers, where once again they got absolutely destroyed in the hands of the Portland Timbers. And then in the first half, 6 minutes into the game, Niskoda was able to score from Villafania to give the Timbers a 1-0 lead before Jody Gonzalez had a chance to equalize for the Galaxy, but unfortunately he hits the post, which I think those 2 moments just kind of sums up in terms of the Galaxy and the Timbers season, where the Timbers kind of got lucky the fact that they did not concede right away after they got the opening goal. The Galaxy are very unlucky the fact that they were able to get the equalizer, and that if they would have got the equalizer at that point, this game could have been a whole lot different than what we're about to see, because after that the Timbers would quickly get that second goal, and it would be Niskoda once again from Chara. I thought originally this was potentially going to call offside, because when Niskoda basically redirect that shot away, I thought maybe he was in an offside position, but when they look at it on the replay, it looked like he was just in an onside position. Therefore, the Timbers were up 2-0 in this game, and I thought this could really get ugly, and it did, because just on the stroke of the half-hour mark, Valeri was able to put away his penalty to give the Timbers a 3-0 lead after Depew basically handballed it, and I thought there was just no way back for the Galaxy, and that if you're the Galaxy, you're just hoping this is damage limitation rather than the fact that they have a chance to come back from a 3-0 deficit that they suffer just 30 minutes into this game. Now, in the second half, it looked like the Timbers kind of got left down to the locker room a little bit longer than the Galaxy, because they completely got caught cold in the first 20 seconds into this game when Papone was able to score from Leggett to give the Galaxy a goal back, and maybe, just maybe, a slight hope of them potentially come back into this. No. Williamson would score to make it get 4-1 in favor of the Timbers right at the hour mark from Niskoda and Chara, before it almost was 5-1 in favor of the Timbers when Kinsman was able to deny Valeri on the free kick. And I gotta say, I really feel sorry for Jonathan Kinsman, and that he really has kind of just got thrown in the deep end by the Galaxy in the past couple of games, where I don't think all the goals that he has conceded has been goals that is necessarily his fault. And just like this game, where all 5 of these go, you can have the best goalkeeper in the world, and I don't think they could prevent at least most of the goals that he had conceded in this game, and that he's basically just completely getting hung out to dry by this Galaxy defense that has just been hot garbage for not just the past couple of games, but pretty much throughout the season in general. Now, eventually, it was 5-1 in favor of the Timbers when Andy Polo would score an absolute banger from Chara to basically make it 5-1. Definitely in contention in terms of goal of the week with the way that Polo was able to hit such a lovely strike from long range to give the Timbers a 5-1 lead. Pavone did make it 5-2 in favor of the Timbers and got a consolation in the first minute of stoppage time, but by then we know that it was just a consolation and it was just way too late for the Galaxy to even think about coming back into this game, as in the end the Timbers 5-2 winner against the Galaxy. And the stats in this game, although it was pretty dead even with both teams getting 13 shots, 7 shots on goal compared to 6 that the Galaxy had, 2 shots off target compared to 3 that the Galaxy had, both teams had 4 shots. That was block and possession wise, dead even at 50% possession. The Timbers was the one that was more clinical in this game. And for the Galaxy, you know, as I said earlier in today's video talking about Schelotto getting fired by the Galaxy, you know, we could always blame him as one of the scapegoat of why the Galaxy have been so bad this year. But at the end of the day, there are other scapegoats that I think you need to blame, and that obviously the players clearly are underachieving in this team, and also the front office of this team are just making really bad decisions in terms of building this squad. And that, again, I feel like this offseason there's got to be some major changes, not just with Schelotto no longer the head coach of this team, but there's probably going to be maybe some big changes in terms of the front office or even in the ownership department too, because I just don't see how in the world in this version of a Galaxy team that unless there's some serious changes that is going to make, this is going to be the result. We're going to see a team that, remember how this was a team that was the standard of MLS just 10 years ago? Yeah, this has just been a shadow of them old self, and that, you know, this offseason is going to be a really big offseason for them to try to fix things up and hopefully begin a long rebuilding process that they're about to endure. But as for the Portland Timbers, with this win, they are able to join the Seattle Sounders and Sporting KC alongside with LAFC and Minnesota as the team that is going to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be the playoff 6-pointer between the Quakes versus RSL. And as I said, this was a game. Whoever wins this one is going to get a huge boost in terms of making the playoffs. And whoever loses this one, most likely their playoff hope is going to go down the drain. And in this resort, it looked like the Quakes just handed a huge boost in terms of playoff hope, although the points per game system that is now implemented in MLS might say otherwise, because I think the Quakes still have a lot of work to do if they want to clinch themselves in terms of making the playoffs. Whereas for RSL, yeah, they are definitely look like they're joining the Galaxy along the list of dead and buried team in the Western Conference in terms of trying to make the playoffs, as they suffered the 2-0 loss in this game. And early in this game, I thought the Quakes looked like they were in control early of this game, and that they were able to score a goal in the 16th minute when Wando was able to put the scrap away after Putnam made a great save on Espinoza. And, you know, I don't know what else I need to say about Wando that I haven't said before, and that the only thing I have to say about Wando is that please don't retire. I mean, he clearly still got it, and he clearly is a guy that can still carry this team on the back and gets this team to the playoffs. I mean, please consider try to maybe play for us another year. And I mean, in some series, no, I kind of want that to happen, knowing how this season has gone, and that, you know, it would definitely be kind of a bittersweet moment if this is really Wando's final year, and that, you know, us fans really want to be in the stands to see him play the final game rather than this season, where that might not be the case, with the rest of our games most likely going to be playing behind closed door. Now, Wando had another chance to score his second goal, but Putno was able to rob Wando in the 27th minute. But then RSL started to get back into this game, and in some way this game kind of started to look a little bit similar to the Vancouver game, where the Quakes started very well and looked like they could have scored maybe 2 or 3 goals to start the game. And then as the game goes on, that momentum started to drift toward the opposition, and this is where I started to be very concerned with the Quakes, because RSL was getting the ball more, and that they were having chances to equalize. They almost did in the 41st minute when Silva basically hits the post and could have easily tied the game up at 1 apiece heading into halftime. And in the second half, as much as I was really hoping that the Quakes can wake up and that this is a warning sign that they basically did not take in the last game with them kind of slacking off after going up 1-0 and ultimately come back to haunt them. That wasn't really the case early on in the second half, because in the second half, RSL continued to press the Quakes, and that there was points where the Quakes were just getting pinned deep in their own half, and my worriness of the fact that it was going to be sooner or later that RSL was going to get that equalizer was really come to reality. But then I decided to once again do something that I did in the Minnesota game, which is I wrote on the board, the Quakes need a second goal. Now, as you already know from earlier this review, when I put that one on the board, the opposition basically equalized. But this time, it seemed like the Quakes actually saw this message and they instantly able to get that second goal. And this was not long after when I wrote this on the board, just 2 minutes later, Wando was able to see that message and comes up big again for this team to score the second and what would be the insurance goal for the Quakes in this game. And that would be the final score in this one, as the Quakes had 13 shots compared to 9 that RSL had, 5 shots on goal compared to none that RSL had, 4 shots off target compared to 4 that RSL had, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 5 that RSL had, and possession-wise, 46% possession compared to 54% possession that RSL had. And by the way, Wando actually won the Player of the Week, and well deserved in terms of winning the Player of the Week, because, you know, even though this might be potentially his last ever season for the Quakes and in his career, what a way to go out, and what a way to kind of just for one last time able to carry this Quakes team, get them over a line and potentially get themselves in a very good position in terms of making the playoffs. Though, as I said earlier, because we're going with a points per game system, the Quakes, I think they might still need a point or even 3 against these last 2 opponents, which is at home against LAFC and on the road against the Seattle Sounders. And those are 2 opponents that, yeah, it's going to be a really big test for the Quakes, and that I hope that we can at least get a point out of either of these 2 opponents, but I won't be surprised if they don't get anything out of these 2 opponents, because those 2 teams are just are way better than what the Quakes in general right now. But as for RSL, like I said, you know, this was a game where it was a must-win for both of these teams, and whoever was the loser of this game had pretty much their playoff hope getting very close to be up in flames, and that is the situation that RSL is in right now. And because we are now going with a points per game system, that chances of their playoff hope have just even taken a huge dent too, because now they're sitting themselves in 10th place right now, and I believe 2 points behind Vancouver right now, and that they really need to not only win their last 2 games of the season, but really need a lot of help in terms of them even getting a chance to be getting back into the playoff race. But last but certainly not least, and talk about another team that might have their playoff hope gone up in flame, is the Houston Dynamo, who, you know, this was always going to be a tough game for the Dynamo in terms of getting points against a very good LAFC team. Although I will say this, Houston had a chance to at least get a draw out of this game, and maybe could have got a victory if they were able to take away their chances. As LAFC, I thought this was a game that not only this was not a vintage win for LAFC, but they really averted another embarrassing moment against a Dynamo team that has been struggling this season, and that despite the fact that the Dynamo was down to 10 men for the last half hour of the game, the LAFC almost blew it late in the game if it wasn't for a call that kind of got in favor of them. Now, in the first half, I thought for the first 8 minutes, the Dynamo were actually by far the better side, and LAFC kind of started off a little bit slow, but they did get their first chance in the 9th minute, and they were able to take advantage of it as Diego Rossi was able to score from Al Munir, and that, again, it was really against the run of plays because I thought the Dynamo could have had a chance to get the opening goal in the first 8 minutes. And this is also where I throw out my classic cliche of saying, when you're the underdog team and you're facing a good team, when you don't put away your chances, that is going to be something that is going to happen. And that 3 minutes later, they had a chance to equalize, but Vermeer was able to rob Manotas in the sequence. I thought Bob Bradley kind of took a huge gamble to try to put Vermeer back in the starting 11 because I thought Ciciaga has been playing very well for this LAFC team, which is kind of a bit of a surprise that Vermeer gets his chances to kind of prove himself a game. And boy, he definitely gave back that trust that Bob Bradley had in this game, as he actually had a really decent game in this. But then just 10 minutes later, LAFC would double their lead, and it actually was a rare center-back combination where Eddie Segura was able to score from Murillo to give LAFC a 2-0 lead. And when I say it's a rare center-back partnership in terms of the assists and goals chart, it's been a while since I've actually seen a center-back able to assist another center-back in an MLS game, because that just does not happen very often in this league. But somehow, in some way, it happened in this instant, and just like that, LAFC were able to double their lead. Although that lead looked like could be in jeopardy, or at least the lead looked like would have been in jeopardy of getting cut in half, because in the 32nd minute, Segura basically handballed it in the box, which gives Houston a chance to get one back and cut the lead in half, which Manotas basically tried to step in. And you know how this season Manotas have joined a long list of players that seems to be cursed this season in terms of struggling, in terms of scoring goals. You know, this was a big moment for him to score a penalty to kind of shake off some of the demons that he has, and a chance to really get things going. But instead of that, he basically continued to have a goal-scoring drought, and the curse is still alive for him because Vermeer was able to deny him from the spot. I don't think that was really a good penalty for Manotas, but this is what happened when you are lacking confidence in front of goal, where even if you're able to step up on the penalty spot and chance to finally break that drought, when you don't have a lot of confidence, that is exactly something that is going to happen. But that being said, not to discredit the fact that Vermeer also did a great job diving the right way and able to keep Houston out in that instant, and that the game remains at 2-0 as we head into the second half. Now, as we head into the second half, and just like how the Portland Timbers were kind of got into the second half a little bit too slow, and that they kind of were in the locker room a little bit too long and conceded an early go into the second half. The same can go with LAFC, where they kind of started off slow and kind of was sleepwalking a little bit, and Houston was able to take advantage as Ariel Lassiter was able to score from Quintero and Manotas to cut the lead into half for the Dynamo. But then it looked like LAFC restored their 2-goal advantage when Rossi was able to put a goal away, but unfortunately VAR overrules that because Rossi was in an offside position before Cifuentes 2 minutes later hits the post, and you just kind of sense that this third goal was coming sooner or later, and that the hopes for the Dynamo to potentially come back might be lessened, and it looked like it was all but gone in the 59th minute when Vera basically gets his second yellow, and that the Dynamo is down to 10 men. And anytime when you're down a man against LAFC, like, let alone if you're not down a man against LAFC on the road, it's already tough enough. But when you're down a man against LAFC on the road, that's just a mission impossible task in terms of trying to get one back. Yet, I will say this with the Dynamo, they did not give up in this game, and they actually did have some good chances to potentially maybe get that second goal. But that being said, LAFC also had some decent chances to put away this game, and they almost did it in the 71st minute when Maric, that I actually got the wrong name in terms of goalkeeper. That's actually the Red Bulls goalkeeper. But yeah, let me just change that. yeah, Maric basically robbed Rossi a chance for his second goal of the game and a chance for LAFC to make it 3-1 before he would deny Vela, who actually went through on goal in the 82nd minute. And just as the clock was winding down and just as if Houston was running out of time to get that equalizer, it looked like they were given that chance in the 87th minute and kind of a redemption from the penalty spot, because there was a penalty that was called after it looked like Latif Blessing actually fouled one of the Dynamo player, who I actually forgot who exactly it was. But when they look at VAR, originally they said it was not a penalty, and I thought it was not a penalty because of the fact that it definitely looked like, even though Blessing kind of high boots one of that Dynamo player kind of went down on the ground a little bit too easily, which that kind of also didn't make any sense either, because when I also look at it, you don't really need to make any contact when you decide to put your feet or put your boots so high onto the ground, because when you do that, that's always a very reckless kind of play, and that, you know, even if you didn't make any contact whatsoever and that somehow the attacker basically go down on ground, sometimes they are going to call it a penalty because it's a reckless kind of play. But instead, the reason why this penalty was overruled was apparently there was an offside that was against the Houston Dynamo, and to this day I still don't know where in the world was the offside called, because the LAFC broadcast that was showing this on ESPN Plus didn't even tell me what exactly happened, and I only realized that it was called offside because I look at the Reddit comment stream, and that there were a couple of people saying that the reason why this was not a penalty was actually because one of the Dynamo player was in an offside position before what happened earlier with Blessing. Looked like he clearly fouled one of the Dynamo player with his reckless kind of high boot action. But yeah, LAFC kind of got away in terms of that moment, and they were in the end able to hold on to get the 2-1 victory. As the shots in this game, 28 shots compared to 9 that the Dynamo has, 5 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Dynamo has, 13 shots off target compared to 4 that the Dynamo has, 10 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Dynamo has, and possession-wise, 61% possession compared to 39% possession that the Dynamo has in this game. And again, LAFC, they averted of what would have been an embarrassing resort against the Dynamo if they would have blown a 2-0 lead at home. And they even conceded a goal against a team that was down to 10 men for the last 30 minutes of the game. But they were able to just hold on for the 2-1 victory and also clinch themselves into the playoffs. Whereas for the Dynamo, yeah, their playoff position is pretty much all gone up in flames, and that they're pretty much now going to be joining the Galaxy in terms of the team in the West that I think, even with the points per game system that were implemented, there's really little chance that they have, unless a miracle would happen in terms of them potentially getting themselves into the playoffs this season. But yeah, there we have it. That is pretty much it for the review of this video. Let me know in the the review of this midweek action. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these games? And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I, of course, will see you guys next time.